Barron Trump stepped onto the stage, and something unbelievable was about to explode. The air crackled with tension even before his tall frame crossed into the spotlight. Jimmy Kimmel sat behind his desk, his usual smirk stretched tight across his face, looking more forced than ever, like he was hiding something big. The audience buzzed with restless energy, their anticipation thick and heavy, though they had no clue what was coming. They could feel it, though. This wasn't just another late-night chat. This was going to be wild, raw, and unforgettable. The cameras swung to the side as the announcer's voice boomed Barron's name, and the crowd's reaction hit like a thunderclap, cheers crashing into boos, awkward half-claps from people unsure if they should cheer or jeer. It was a messy, chaotic sound, heavier than anyone expected, like a weight pressing down on the room. Something massive was brewing, and it was about to blow the roof off. Barron strode out, all 67 of him, his head high, his face calm but his eyes sharp as knives. At just 19, he carried a quiet strength, a mix of youth and something harder, something forged in the Trump name. He waved at the crowd, a quick, casual flick of his hand, like the boos didn't even register. He sat down, crossed his long legs, adjusted his sleek black jacket, and leaned back, cool and unbothered. Kimmel didn't waste a second on small talk. No, how's college, or nice to see you. His grin stayed plastered on, but his eyes glinted with a sharpness that screamed trouble. The audience shifted in their seats, sensing the shift. For a few minutes, it was the usual late-night dance, Kimmel tossing light jabs about the Trump family, Barron brushing them off with a faint half-smile. But then, the air changed. Kimmel's voice dropped. His smirk faded just a touch, and he leaned forward, elbows on the desk, locking eyes with Barron. The game was over. The topic hit like a bomb: race. Kimmel didn't tiptoe around it. He went straight for the throat, bringing up Barron's dad, Donald Trump, and the family's long, messy history. It wasn't a gentle question, it was a brutal challenge. He didn't just ask about old comments or policies. He laid it all out, raw and blunt. Donald's speeches, his supporters, the controversies that followed the Trumps like a shadow. The implication was clear, sharp, and ugly. Was Barron part of this? Did he carry the same weight, the same sins? The room froze. The casual laughter that usually floated through these interviews vanished. A few gasps broke the silence, quick, stunned breaths from people who didn't expect Kimmel to swing that hard, that fast. Barron's face didn't crack right away, but his body told a different story, shoulders stiffening, fingers twitching on the chair's arm. He wasn't ready for this. Not like this. Barron had lived his whole life under a microscope, son of a president, a billionaire, a man who dominated the world's attention. Born in 2006, he was the youngest Trump, the quiet one, always in the background of the family's loud, brash saga. His mom, Melania, kept him close, shielding him from the chaos of Donald's storms. He grew up in gold-plated penthouses, surrounded by Secret Service, a kid who didn't talk much because he didn't have to. People talked for him, guessing who he'd become, what he'd do with that towering height and those piercing eyes. At 19, he was just starting to step out, college, a low profile, a life away from the headlines. But the Trump name, it stuck to him like glue. Love it or hate it, it defined him. That night on Kimmel's stage, he wasn't just Barron anymore. He was a target, and something insane was about to happen. Kimmel didn't blink. He stared Barron down, daring him to answer. The host had a history of pushing big names, politicians, stars, anyone with a pulse, but this was different. Barron wasn't his dad, loud and battle-hardened. He was young, untested, a mystery even to the crowd. Would he laugh it off, stay quiet, fight back? No one knew. Barron's jaw tightened just a little, and a flicker of irritation sparked in his eyes. He adjusted his jacket, took a slow, deep breath like he was steadying himself for a storm. The silence stretched, thick and heavy like the moment before lightning strikes. Then he leaned forward, his voice low but firm, and the first crack in the night appeared. What came next wasn't just an answer, it was a spark, a flame that would set everything ablaze. But before we dive into that, into the moment that flipped the world upside down, let's step back. Who is Barron Trump? How did he end up here? This wasn't chance. This was fate, and it was about to get wild. Barron's life wasn't normal, not even close. He grew up in Trump Tower, a kid in a palace, surrounded by wealth most can't dream of. His dad was Donald, loud, brash, a man who thrived on fights and headlines. His mom was Melania, cool, quiet, a former model who kept Barron out of the chaos. He went to private schools, played soccer, towered over everyone by his teens. At 67, he was a giant physically and in the public's imagination. People called him Little Donald, guessed he'd run for office, wondered if he'd inherit the Trump empire. But Barron stayed silent. He didn't tweet, didn't pose, didn't chase the spotlight. He was the mystery Trump, handsome, distant, a blank slate. That night, though, the slate got written on big, bold, and messy. Kimmel's stage was his first real test, and it was about to turn into a war zone. Something huge was coming, and no one could stop it. Barron Trump didn't back down when Jimmy Kimmel dropped the race bomb. It was like lighting a fuse in a room full of gas. The tension was already thick, the audience on edge, waiting for the young Trump to buckle under the host's brutal swing. But Barron didn't buckle. He burned. His voice came out low, steady, slicing through the silence like a razor. He didn't shout, not yet, but every word hit hard. He pushed back, dismissing Kimmel's attack with a shake of his head and that cool, quiet confidence he'd carried in. The crowd stirred, some laughed, quick and nervous, others booed, low and sharp. Everyone was locked in, eyes wide, knowing this was about to get crazier than anyone thought. Kimmel didn't flinch. His smirk was gone, replaced by a cold, piercing glare. He'd come ready to trap Barron, to make him squirm. Barron fired back, accusing Kimmel of twisting the truth, of dragging his family through the dirt for laughs. His voice grew louder, sharper, a raw edge creeping in that wasn't there before. He dug into Kimmel's past, old skits, dumb jokes, moments the host probably hoped were forgotten. Barron wanted to turn it around, make Kimmel the villain, the hypocrite. The audience murmured, some nodded, some scoffed, but the energy shifted. This wasn't a kid dodging punches. This was a fighter stepping up, and the ring was heating up fast. Host stayed calm, too calm. He let Barron swing, let him talk, but when the young Trump paused, Kimmel hit again. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. He piled on more Donald speeches, Barron's silence, the Trump name tied to dark headlines. It wasn't random, it was a wall, brick by brick, closing in tight. Barron's face tightened, his eyes narrowing. He wasn't used to this, not this direct, not this personal. Grown up watching his dad battle the world, but this was his fight now. The crowd went quiet again, the air buzzing with something heavy. Barron leaned in, cutting Kimmel off mid-sentence, his voice rising. He wasn't retreating, he was charging, and the clash was getting messy. Barron's life had built him for pressure, even if he didn't ask for it. He'd spent years in the shadows, private schools, guarded homes, a mom who taught him to stay strong and silent. At 67, he towered over most, a quiet giant who didn't need to prove anything. But the Trump name, it was a magnet, love from some, hate from others. He'd seen his dad take hits, debates, scandals, endless TV rants, but Barron stayed out of it. Until now. At 19, he was stepping into the fire, and Kimmel was the first real blaze. The host thought he'd break him, thought a kid couldn't handle the heat. Barron was proving him wrong, but the flames were rising, and his cool was starting to crack. The argument turned wild. Barron threw everything, called Kimmel biased, part of the fake news machine his dad always trashed. He hit the ratings card, "Your show's a flop, Jimmy," and the crowd let out a shaky laugh. Kimmel didn't blink. He folded his arms, leaned back, and watched Barron like a predator sizing up prey. Then he went for the kill. "Every time you're stuck, you dodge or attack, just like your dad." The room gasped. Barron's face flushed red, his hands gripping the chair so tight his knuckles went white. This wasn't about race anymore. It was about him, his blood, his roots. He snapped back fast and sharp, calling Kimmel a nobody, a joke. The insults flew, raw and messy, but they didn't land clean. Kimmel just sat there, letting Barron unravel, and the tension was electric. Barron's cool was slipping now. His voice cracked, his hands waved, jabbing the air. He wasn't just defending his dad, he was defending himself, his name, everything he'd been born into. Kimmel smiled, small and sharp, and that lit the fuse. Barron's temper flared, real, red-hot anger spilling out. He pointed at Kimmel, his voice booming, accusing him of setting traps, twisting truth. The audience squirmed. This wasn't fun anymore. It was raw, personal, out of control. Barron wasn't a kid in over his head. He was a Trump fighting like one, and something massive was about to break loose. The night was spiraling, and it was only getting hotter. This wasn't the end. It was the start of something wilder than anyone could imagine. Barron Trump was losing it, and the room knew it. His face was red, his hands slashing through the air, his voice loud and rough as he tore into Jimmy Kimmel. The calm, towering 19-year-old who'd walked in was gone, replaced by something fiercer, angrier. Kimmel had pushed him too far, race, family, legacy, and Barron pushed back with everything he had. The host's question wasn't just a jab, it was a dagger, and Barron was bleeding. He wasn't just defending his dad now, he was fighting for himself, his pride, his place. The audience sat frozen, no laughs, no claps, just a thick hum of tension. This wasn't late-night TV anymore. This was a battlefield, and it was about to explode. Kimmel stayed steady, his posture loose, his eyes like steel. He'd cornered Barron, and he knew it. Every time Barron tried to dodge, shift the talk to Kimmel's flops, the media's lies, Kimmel dragged him back. More quotes, more history, more weight. Barron's breathing got heavy, his movements wilder. He gripped the chair, leaned in close, his words fast and clipped. He wasn't debating, he was yelling, pointing, accusing Kimmel of disrespect, of rigging the game. The crowd shifted, uneasy, hooked. This wasn't the Barron they'd guessed at, quiet, distant. This was a kid on fire, and Kimmel was fanning the flames with every move. Barron's past had built him for pressure, but not this kind. Growing up, Trump meant chaos, cameras, crowds, a dad who thrived on fights. Melania kept him grounded, taught him to stay cool, let the noise pass. He dodged the spotlight, college, sports, a life off the grid, but the name stuck. At 19, he was still figuring it out, a giant in a world that wouldn't leave him alone. Kimmel's stage was his first big test, and it was brutal. The host didn't care about Barron's age. He saw a Trump, a target, and went all in. Barron fought back, but the heat was rising and his cool was cracking fast. The room could feel it. Something was about to snap. Then Kimmel landed the big one. He leaned forward, voice low, and hit. You deflect or attack when you're stuck, just like him. The him was Donald, and it cut deep. Barron's eyes narrowed, his face tight. He shouted back, called Kimmel a loser, a fake, his voice shaking with rage. The insults piled up, messy and loud, but they didn't stop Kimmel. The host just watched, letting Barron dig deeper. The audience saw it. Barron wasn't winning. He was flailing, proving Kimmel right with every word. Then Kimmel smirked, not big, just enough, and Barron snapped. His voice hit a new pitch, raw and furious, accusing Kimmel of everything, lies, setups, hate. The crowd squirmed. This wasn't fun anymore. It was real, raw, and spiraling out of control. The breaking point came fast. Barron stood up, towering over the set, his hands shaking. He ripped the mic off his jacket, tossed it down with a thud that echoed through the studio. The crowd gasped, some laughed, some clapped, all stunned. Kimmel's eyebrows lifted, but he didn't move. Barron shook his head, muttering under his breath, his face hard as stone. He stormed off, long strides eating up the stage, cameras scrambling to follow. His exit was loud, footsteps pounding, a shadow disappearing into the dark. The room sat silent for a beat, then exploded, cheers, gasps, chaos. Kimmel exhaled, turned to the camera, and smiled, slow, deliberate, victorious. Barron was gone, but the damage was done. The air still buzzed with what happened. A kid pushed too far, a host who didn't blink. Barron's quiet life was over now. This was his moment, wanted or not. Something huge had just started, a fire that wouldn't die. The world was about to jump in, and it was going to get crazier than anyone could guess. Barron had walked off, but Kimmel had won, or so it seemed. The night wasn't over. It was just the beginning of a storm that would shake everything, and Barron's name would never be the same. Barron Trump's exit left the studio in shock, but the real explosion was just starting. His heavy footsteps faded as he stormed off Jimmy Kimmel's set, leaving behind a room buzzing with disbelief. The air felt thick, like it was holding its breath, waiting for the next blast. The audience didn't know what to do. Some laughed, sharp and nervous. Others clapped like they'd seen a knockout, and a few just sat there, jaws dropped, eyes wide. This wasn't how late-night TV worked. This wasn't a scripted bit or a planned stunt. This was real. messy, ugly, and so wild it felt like the world had flipped upside down. Kimmel didn't rush to fill the silence. He let it sit, let the chaos sink in, then leaned back, tapped his fingers on the desk, and smiled. A slow, quiet smile that screamed victory. That smile was a weapon. It wasn't loud or showy, but it cut deep. It said, "I broke him. I won." The audience felt it too. They erupted again, a wave of noise crashing through the room. Cheers mixed with gasps, claps tangled with murmurs. Kimmel turned to the camera, his eyes glinting, and let the moment breathe. He didn't need to gloat or pile on. Barron walking off was the win, raw, unfiltered, undeniable. The cameras kept rolling, catching every second. The stunned crowd, the empty chair, the faint echo of Barron's exit still hanging in the air. This wasn't just a TV moment. This was history, and everyone watching knew it. Barron's quiet life as the mystery Trump was shattered, and the world was about to pounce. Backstage, chaos was brewing. No cameras caught it, but the rumors flew fast. Staffers whispered about Barron packing, his face red with fury, his long frame tense and restless. Some said he kicked a wall, others claimed he muttered curses at Kimmel, at the show, at everything. His team stayed tight-lipped, but the stories spread like wildfire anyway. He'd come onto Kimmel's stage expecting a fight, sure, but not this, not a slaughter. He'd faced paparazzi, online hate, but this was different. Kimmel hadn't just challenged him. He'd humiliated him, stripped him bare on live TV, and Barron couldn't take it. That silence after he left, it wasn't empty. It screamed with everything he couldn't say, and it was only the start of the storm. Meanwhile, Kimmel played it cool. After the cameras cut, he didn't jump up or cheer. He stayed at his desk, chatting with the crew, cracking low-key jokes like it was just another night. But his team knew better. They saw the spark in his eye, the quiet thrill of a man who just pulled off something massive. The producers were already moving, clips were being cut, highlights prepped, ready to flood the internet. They didn't need to push it. This was going viral on its own. Within minutes, the first shaky phone videos hit social media. Barron's outburst, Kimmel's smirk, the walk-off. X lit up like a bonfire. Hashtags popped off. Barron meltdown, Kimmel trap, Trump kid cracks. People couldn't stop watching, couldn't stop talking. It was everywhere, spreading faster than anyone could track. The internet didn't just react, it detonated. Clips got remixed. Barron's mic toss with dramatic music. Kimmel's smirk slowed down for effect. Memes flooded in, one looped Barron storming off with "run" in huge letters. Another captioned Kimmel's smile with "when you break a Trump." The takes were endless. Barron's fans, Trump loyalists mostly, screamed foul, called it a setup, a cheap shot from the woke media. Kimmel's fans hailed it as a takedown for the ages, proof the Trump name couldn't handle real heat. Everyone had a side and no one was quiet. News outlets jumped in fast. CNN had a headline up before Barron's car left the lot. Barron Trump storms off Kimmel's set after race clash. Fox News spun it hard. Kimmel's bias humiliates young Trump. X was a war zone and the battle was just beginning. But the big question hung heavy. What would Barron do next? He walked off, sure, but he was a Trump. Silence wasn't their style. People waited, refreshing his socials, watching X, expecting a comeback. Would he hit back, stay quiet, let his dad fight for him? The silence from his camp was loud, too loud, and it made the story bigger, scarier. Kimmel had won the night, but the war, that was still up in the air. Barron's exit wasn't the end, it was the spark. Something wilder was coming, something that would shake the world even harder. The young Trump's first big moment had blown up, and it was about to get crazier than anyone could dream. Barron Trump's walk-off from Jimmy Kimmel's stage didn't just break the internet, it shattered it into a million pieces. By the time the show's credits rolled, the clip was everywhere. You couldn't scroll X without seeing it. Barron's red face, his mic hitting the floor, Kimmel's smug lean back. It wasn't just a moment anymore. It was a wildfire spreading fast and burning hot. People weren't just watching. They were picking sides, drawing lines, screaming their takes into the void. The numbers were insane. Millions of views in hours, retweets piling up by the thousands, comments flooding so fast no one could keep up. This wasn't a late-night spat. This was a cultural bomb, and the fallout was hitting the world like a tsunami. The reactions were pure chaos. Barron's fans, Trump diehards, mostly rallied hard, flooding X with defenses. "Kimmel's a bully," they yelled. "Set him up to fail." They posted old clips of Kimmel's flops, crude skits, awkward moments trying to flip the script. "He's the problem, not Barron." They called it a Hollywood hit job, a desperate grab for ratings from a washed-up host. But Kimmel's supporters hit back just as fierce. "Barron cracked," they cheered. "Can't handle the truth." They shared Donald's old tweets, Bertha rants, edgy stuff, proof, they said, that Kimmel was right to dig in. The fight wasn't just loud, it was personal. Strangers cursed each other out online, families argued at home, friends clashed over drinks. This wasn't about politics anymore, it was a blood feud, and Barron was the spark. Mainstream media dove in headfirst. CNN ran a panel within the hour, pundits picking apart every second, every word. "Barron folded under pressure," one said. "He's not ready for this." Fox News spun it the other way. "Kimmel's a coward attacking a kid." MSNBC called it the Trump mask slipping again. Headlines stacked up fast, clickbait gold like "Barron's epic meltdown shocks nation" and "Kimmel crushes young Trump on live TV." Even international outlets jumped in: BBC, Al Jazeera, papers in Australia and Japan, all buzzing about the tall, quiet Trump kid who'd blown up on Kimmel's stage. The world wasn't just watching America, it was watching Barron, and the noise was deafening. Celebrities picked sides, making it louder. A big rapper tweeted, "Kimmel won, Barron 0, truth hurts." A MAGA actor fired back, "Hollywood elites like Kimmel hate real kids like Barron." A comedian posted a laughing emoji with "this kid's toast," while Trump allies called Kimmel a snake. The culture war was in overdrive, left versus right, young versus old, all sparked by one brutal night. Late-night rivals weighed in too. One host ran a bit the next night, joking, "Barron walked off Kimmel faster than his dad walks off a golf course." Another kept it light but couldn't resist a jab. The TV world was eating itself alive, and everyone wanted a piece of the Barron story. Then the memes took over. They were relentless. Barron's mic drop set to movie soundtracks, Kimmel's smirk photoshopped onto villains. One viral GIF showed Barron storming off with "peace out" flashing, looping endlessly. Another slowed his chair shove, captioned, "When you lose the fight and the plot." The internet turned it into a game. Who could make it funnier, darker, wilder? Brands jumped in too. Fast food chains tweeted, "Our nuggets don't walk out on you," with a wink. It was madness, a free-for-all where everyone, fans, haters, companies, piled onto the chaos. The clip wasn't just trending, it was a beast, swallowing everything in its path. But Barron stayed quiet, too quiet. His socials, usually empty anyway, stayed dark. No rants, no comebacks, nothing. X was a different story. His fans kept the fire burning, but the kid himself, silent. People started guessing. Was he plotting, hiding, waiting for his dad to step in? Some said he'd post soon, a classic Trump move to flip the script. Others wondered if he'd stay off, let it fade. The silence fueled the frenzy. Every hour without a word made the story bigger, wilder. Kimmel didn't gloat either. He went silent too, letting the world spin itself dizzy. The tension was unbearable. Something was coming, something huge, and no one knew what. The night wasn't over. It was just reloading, and Barron's next move would decide everything. Barron Trump's meltdown on Jimmy Kimmel's stage didn't just end when he walked off. It lit a fire that burned for months, years, maybe forever. That night, March 25, 2025, wasn't just a clash. It was a bomb that kept exploding, a moment so raw, so wild, it rewrote Barron's life and shook the world. The clip of him ripping off his mic, storming out, Kimmel's smirk, it didn't fade. It grew, morphed, became a legend that wouldn't die. People didn't just watch it. They lived it, fought over it, made it part of their own stories. Was Barron a kid broken by pressure? A Trump fighting back? The truth got lost in the noise, but one thing stuck. Barron's quiet days were gone, and the fallout was massive, messy, and unstoppable. The numbers told the tale first. That clip hit 100 million views on YouTube in a week, faster than anything before it. X posts topped 25 million, hashtags like Barron Meltdown and Kimmel wins drowning out everything else. TV networks looped it. Fox News called it a disgraceful attack. CNN said, a viral moment. MSNBC smirked, Trump 2 fails. Ratings for Kimmel show that night smashed records, highest ever, a goldmine for ABC. Ad companies fought to buy slots, betting on the hype. It wasn't just a win for Kimmel, it was a cash cow. But the money was nothing compared to the power. Who had it, who lost it, who grabbed it in the wreckage. Barron's walk-off wasn't the end. It was the start of something bigger, something that wouldn't stop growing. Barron broke his silence 5 days later, not on X, but a quiet post on a new platform his dad loved. It was short, sharp. Kimmel's a clown, I don't play games, thanks for the support. Classic Trump, caps light, insults heavy. His fans went nuts, 5 million likes, 1 million shares. He's back, they cheered. Kid's a fighter. But the haters pounced, pointed out he didn't answer Kimmel's core hit, just dodged again. The post didn't flip the story, it fueled it. Barron wasn't in control yet. He was swinging, but the punches weren't landing like his dad's used to. The world watched, waiting for more, and the silence after that post only made the hunger grow. Kimmel waited longer, 8 days before his move. He saved it for his show, knowing millions would tune in. He walked out, grinned, and let the crowd roar. So Barron didn't like our chat, he started, smirking. He walked off, fastest I've seen a Trump move. The audience laughed, cheered, ate it up. He replayed the clip, paused at Barron's mic toss, and said, "This is what happens when you ask a question and the answer's too big." He didn't call Barron out hard, just let the moment speak. It was perfect. 25 million watched live, millions more online. Kimmel didn't restart the fight. He stoked the flames, kept the heat on, and walked away clean. The crowd loved it, and Barron's name stayed in the fire. The ripple effects hit hard. Barron's team scrambled, booked him on safe ground, podcasts, friendly shows, a Trump rally. There he was, taller, quieter, but fierce, saying little, letting the crowd cheer. "Kimmel's nothing," he muttered once, and the fans roared, but the energy felt off, forced, shaky. Some supporters stayed loyal, always would, but others whispered doubts. "He's not Donald," one blog said, "too green." Polls twitched, Barron's name recognition spiked, but his image wobbled. Critics smelled weakness, allies circled tighter. The Kimmel clash wasn't just a bad night, it was a scar, and it kept bleeding. His quiet life, over. He was a Trump in the fight now, like it or not. Kimmel's star shot up. Liberals crowned him king, the guy who broke a Trump. His show's numbers soared, new fans flooding in. But the right painted him a monster, smug, cruel, a bully with a mic. Threats hit his inbox, security doubled. He laughed it off on air. "If Barron's mad, I'm doing something right." The culture war raged, protests outside ABC, counter-rallies for free speech. Comics split, some called Kimmel a genius, others said Barron got ambushed. The divide wasn't new, but this made it louder, uglier, more personal. Barron's walk-off became a symbol, weakness to some, defiance to others. The world picked it apart, and the pieces kept flying. Then the shock came 6 weeks later. Barron's team filed a defamation suit, $15 million, claiming Kimmel's race hit was a lie to ruin him. Legal experts shrugged, First Amendment, public figure, slim odds, but it kept the story alive. Kimmel's crew laughed, "See you in court." Filings piled up, Barron's silence as evidence, Kimmel's smirk as defense. It was theater, pure and simple, and the world ate it up. X exploded again, #Barron vs. Kimmel trending for weeks. Some saw it as revenge, others, a desperate grab to rewrite the night. Either way, it dragged the meltdown into 2026, a saga with no end. Barron wasn't backing down, but he wasn't winning either, not yet. What did it mean? Barron's image, once a blank slate, cracked. He was still a giant, but a bruised one. Kimmel proved he could hit hard and walk away smiling. The public stayed split. Half saw a kid crushed, half a fighter rising. The truth, buried in the chaos. That night became legend, the meltdown that shook a dynasty, a clash that defined a moment. It wasn't about race or politics anymore. It was about pride, power, and who'd break first. Barron walked off, Kimmel grinned, and the world kept spinning, louder than ever. Years later, people still ask, who won? The answer shifts with every voice, but one thing's sure. Barron Trump's quiet days ended that night, and the fire he started still burns bright. Barron's meltdown was unreal, Did Kimmel crush him or did he fight back like a Trump? Smash that like button if this blew your mind. Subscribe now and hit the bell, you won't want to miss what's next. Share this with everyone, let's get the world talking. Drop your take in the comments, who really won that night? Let's battle it out below. Catch you in the next one.